If you buy and sell vehicles for a profit or you want to, you're in the right place. This is the Flipping Genius podcast. Our number one goal is to help our listeners make more money. Every episode, we share information, ideas, and experiences of real-life car flippers. I'm Randy Lee. I'm the host of Flipping Genius. I've flipped cars most of my life. For over a dozen years now, I've been a licensed dealer. I am working to build the best podcast about successfully flipping cars for a consistent profit. Let's get to it, flippers. Hey, welcome back to Flipping Genius. Hope you guys had a great holiday season. As of this moment, I'm recording the week after Thanksgiving 2022. Little behind schedule, but hey, it's Thanksgiving time and football time and all that good stuff. So it just got a couple days behind, but we're recording a special episode 146 of Flipping Genius, the podcast about car flipping, but it's also the podcast about life, right? Because that's really what everything is about, everything, as we said a couple weeks ago. The title of this one is Becoming You, because I've been thinking a lot as we approach the beginning of the year. It's always time for me to start locking into my plans for the next year and figure out where I've been, where I want to go. And with that in mind, I think it's a really good idea to take an inventory of yourself and who you are and who you want to be. And I thought, well, I got to share it with the flippers and help you get on track wherever that track takes you. As I study this more and more and discuss it with the most important person in my life, my beautiful bride, Terry, we recognize that we're all different and we have a different path to travel. We have different desires and different motivations, and we're gonna hit these opportunities in life and approach them in a different angle. Keep that in mind as you listen to what I have to say, as you hear what others say on the car flipping forum. Everybody has their best intent, I believe, in mind most of the time, but it doesn't always apply to you. You know, not directly. What Randy Lee would do is not what you might do. You may do it completely differently or slightly differently, but it doesn't mean we can't learn from each other. We can learn a lot from each other if we just listen. And we can learn even more, I believe, when we share. So I want to encourage all of you to interact on the Car Flipping Forum. If you're not a member of the Flipping Genius Car Flipping Forum yet, just search Flipping Genius on Facebook and you'll find our Car Flipping Forum. It continues to grow. It continues to be active and more interactive, and the more we're interacting with each other, the more better it will be. So today we're going to talk about becoming you, and I'm going to use myself as an example. I'm an interesting example because everybody's got a different path that they follow. Some of you have been on the same path all your life. Some of you are just getting started on that path. I mean, an exciting interview last week with a young man who is obviously on track to do some big things in the car business, but very much, different than me, different from you. But we can learn from each other and we can be inspired by each other too. I made a little list here. Boom. Where's that? There it is. of the things that I've become over the years. I thought this was interesting. Like I said, it's a self-analysis. I encourage you to do something similar. I'm going to share my history with you in hopes that it will encourage you to look at your history. And I'm hoping also that it's going to encourage you to recognize the value in whatever you're doing right now and the value in what you've done before and how it can affect what you're doing right now. One of the questions I want you to ask yourself between now and the beginning of 2023, or whenever you're listening to this, but specifically if you're listening to this in real time at the end of 2022, ask yourself, what Where do I want to go? What do I want to be? What do I want to come of the efforts that I'm making in my flipping business? Uh, it's huge. It's a huge answer, but you've got to ask yourself that, and you've got to find that answer, because if you don't have a target to shoot for, you're just shooting off into the woods. Now, I heard a great story about that, but I'm not gonna get off track. I'm gonna stay on track here. I I listen so much these days to audiobooks as I walk, and it's fantastic. It's a fantastic way to entertain yourself, to exercise, and to educate yourself. I encourage you greatly to do that too. Um, but so I'm constantly hearing these stories I want to share with you, but I gotta keep her on track. So becoming you, I thought about it. What did I become first? What did I become first? And the first thing that I thought of becoming, of course, I was a baby. And the next thing I became, I'm sure that in my mind's eye, as I think about that moment when I was born, and I'm taking it all the way back. I'm not going to go into great detail, but I'm just talking about what did I become first? I became a son. I was a son of my parents. They brought me home, and I became a brother. I was a brother to my siblings. I had two brothers and a sister at that time. Later on, I became the big brother to two other guys, and it wasn't long after that they made me a Catholic. And if you know much about Catholicism, that means they baptized me. Now, don't block me out saying, "Oh, this guy, I can't listen to him anymore." We're not going to go into a lot of details on that. But if you want details, feel free to write me, flippingquestions@gmail.com. Along the way, I become a friend. I remember my first friendship. I remember was a guy named Robert Cruz, who lived two doors down from me. And Robert taught me a lot of stuff. He was a year older than me, which is a big deal when you're like 4 years old. Uh, Robert taught me how to communicate with the police. And it was not a very good lesson, because the policeman rolled the window down and said, "Do you know what that means when you do what Robert Cruz told me to do?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Don't do it anymore." But I'll just tell you, it had to do with my middle finger. I was about 4 years old, and I was flipping off a policeman. I love policemen. I love what you guys do. So please don't hold that against me either. But that's just what Robert Cruz taught me. My first friend, he taught me how to throw snowballs at cars. He taught me how to skip school when I was in kindergarten. We skipped school throwing snowballs at cars. And as far as I can remember, that was a pretty good day. And that was the next thing I became, was a student. And then later on, because I was a Catholic, I became an altar boy. So all these are these things that I was becoming, and in life we become things. But as we get older, a lot of times we stop becoming things. We just get stuck in this rut of where we're at. Now you're going to hear my history, and I want you to compare it to your history. I would love to hear you guys. I'd love for you to share your history with me. Just jot down an outline of what you've become. After you listen to mine, write yours, email it to me, flippingquestions@gmail.com. I would love to see where you've been, where you're going, because we're going to talk about where we're going later too. And this is probably going to be at least a two-part series, guys, because I'm old and I've done a lot of stuff, but man, this is integral in the success of where we go, is knowing where we've been and then recognizing where we want to go. My first job, I was 10 years old. My first job was as a golf caddy. I caddied at Inverness Country Club in Toledo, Ohio. And there's many colorful stories about my career as a golf caddy, and I'm not going to get into all of them here because that's not what this is about. But it was very colorful, and I learned a lot from all the guys. What an interesting experience, sending a 10-year-old boy 5 years from his house on a bicycle every day to interact with about, I don't know, something like 200 guys from ages 10 to 18, and there's all kind of lessons were learned there. And eventually, I was one of the instructors of the lessons there at Inverness. It wasn't long after that I became. I wrote businessman, but it really was business boy. I learned that golf balls, I was good at finding them, and they could be sold. and they shut down the private course on Mondays, and we could go play golf for free at this beautiful golf course. But it was a 5 mile ride on my bicycle with my 5 iron. I'd go over and play golf occasionally, but I found it much more productive to take the golf balls I had found and take them over to the public course and sell them there. So it was my first business venture, really. It was a lot of fun, making money, having money to spend on football cards or whatever 10-year-old boys spend their money on. And I recall setting up my shop there on about the 4th or 5th hole at Ottawa Park Golf Course in Toledo, Ohio. I knew about marketing already. I knew you clean your golf balls up; they had to be shiny. Then I'd go into the garbage cans at Inverness or wherever I could find boxes of empty golf ball box containers, both the sleeves and the big boxes. I would repackage the balls that I had found in the ditch and in the high grass, and I'd put them in these boxes so they looked like they were brand new. I had a little snap on the front of my bike so I could clamp the balls in there and carry them over in a milk carton basket of some sort. And I'd set up my little stand there next to the green, next to the tee, and I'd sell my golf balls. And I can't remember how much I got for them, but it was a pretty fair price. It was a lot better price than they get at the pro shop, but it was a lot better price for me than I would get any place else, because these guys, it's supply and demand. I have golf balls, they're losing them, and I've got a good price. It got to be where the golfers knew if they, you can get some from the kid on the 4th or 5th hole. Once that got back to the pro shop, and so the pro shop was looking for me and they'd chase me away. But I was also set up right next to the woods, so I could jump on my JC Higgins bike and rip through the woods with my balls. They never caught me, and they never absconded with my balls, which they definitely would have wanted to do. But that was my big thing. That was the first thing that I became on my own. I became a small businessman, an entrepreneur of sorts. I didn't have a license. I'm sure it was not illegal, but I was 10. I wasn't real worried about that. But I was making money on my own, and it was my first thing that I became. Now, about the same time, I became a football player, and that was a big part of my life, but that was a different story. Not long after this, Robert Cruz, again, helped me become an employee. He got me a job at where his mother worked, and he worked at Sterling Milk Store, and he and I think alternated days, and we stocked the cooler. There's a lot more stories to go with that. I'm not going to tell you all the stories. Now, along the way, I also worked in my teenage years at a few restaurants, and I did some things that I think you would call criminal. So I guess I became a criminal. I guess all kids get into some mischief. I definitely did that. I won't go into great detail. I don't know what the statute of limitations is on that kind of stuff. So I became a wrestler. I became a shot putter. Along the way, I eventually became a boyfriend to somebody. I don't know if they considered me that or if I considered me that, but that's something you become too. And worked my way through school and did all that kind of stuff. And my first serious job was outside of the typical stuff that kids do when they're going to high school, was as a garbage man. Now, it was a summer job, and I got promotions one after the other because guys were getting hurt on the job. One guy had a hand cut off, another guy had a heart attack, and eventually I got promoted all the way up to where I was driving a big Diamond Rio. It seemed like it was like a 6-speed or something, like 7-speed. I can't remember how many gears there were, but it was a big rear load garbage truck, and I had to drive it all the way out from one side of town to the other side of town. I don't know if you're supposed to have a special license to do that. I did not have one, and I was working for a big company, and amazingly, I made it back and forth. I don't know how long they had me driving that thing, but that was a dangerous venture, and I never hurt anybody. And that was, so I got elevated from the guy who who paints the containers to the guy who first promotion was loading the back of the truck, next promotion was driving and loading the truck. And I tell you this because just like when I was younger and I saw the opportunity as a golf caddy to make some extra money on the side. I made more money on the side selling those golf balls than I did, I think, all week caddying. I realized that the real money on that garbage truck wasn't being made on the front or the back of that truck. It was the guy who owned the truck. And it wasn't long. I saved up enough money to buy a truck of my own. It wasn't a garbage truck. It was a pickup truck. And I built a bed on the back. I built built up the sidewalls of the bed so that I could load that garbage truck. And I started Abracadabra Waste Removal. And that was my first venture into formal business, I suppose. I went out and made sales. I basically stole accounts from other companies. I knew what they were paying, so it was pretty easy for me to undercut the deals because I could read paperwork and I understood what things were. And I got the Abracadabra Waste Removal company running, and that was pretty exciting. I'm going to take a little break here. When I come back, I'll tell you about how that venture wound up. All right, we're going to get back to becoming you. That's the title of this one. And so along the way, I'm telling you about how I was becoming me. And at that point in time, I had become the owner of the Abracadabra Waste Removal Company. Actually, I had a picture of a rabbit jumping out of a top hat on the side of a fiber wood board side board of this old pickup truck, old Ford pickup truck. And it was going okay. I was literally loading this thing by hand out of dumpsters. It was nasty, but the money was good, a lot better than it was if I was working for somebody else. And I was excited because I could make some money. And I thought, now the key is to expand. You learn along the way. If you're becoming you, it means you're making mistakes. And we're going to talk more about that and how it affects what you do right now in the car flipping business, or what you want to do in the car flipping business. I was making mistakes, which meant I was learning, and these lessons, I had no idea, but these lessons were going to benefit me later. And the first stupid thing I did was expand too quickly. I wouldn't say it was the first thing I did. There's a whole bunch of stupid things I'd done before that, but I didn't recognize them yet. But when I expanded too quickly and bought a second truck, and both trucks broke down, I had no money in my reserves at all. That's when Abracadabra Waste Removal disappeared. And it literally did. The truck no longer showed up to pick up the dumpsters. Now you might wonder, if you're thinking this through, how did I get dumpsters? Well, I worked all that out. I didn't have to have my own dumpsters. We rented the dumpsters from my competitors, and I would just talk to my customers. I'd say, call BFI, call Waste Management, call the other company, and tell them that you're shutting down for remodeling or something like that, and you want to keep the dumpster there on the premise, and you'll call them when you need a dump, and they're going to charge you a little flat fee, which I'll deduct from the bill for me. So we're growing so fast that I can't keep pace with the dumpster demand. I'm pretty sure that was the terminology that I used. So anyway, lots of things I should have done differently, but I was only 17 or 18 years old. I didn't know all the answers yet. I'm 62 years old now. I do not know all the answers yet either. But now I'm smart enough to know that. Back then, I don't think I did. Excuse me. So yes, Abracadabra, it was kind of humorous if you're thinking about it. It disappeared. It was gone. I cannot remember exactly. I was becoming a lot of things back in those days, and then it was time for college, and in between college and football and track, like I said, I was a shot putter. I had to make some money, and I got a job with a clothing store called Harry's Clothing, and I became a salesman for the first time. A fellow by the name of Ray Tucholsky, I remember. He didn't like me a lot, but he I think he liked me more than a couple other guys, so I got the job. And Ray taught me about the clothing business, and he taught me about selling to the extent that he could. And I learned a lot from Ray. I learned a lot about men's clothes. I learned about business. I learned about wooing a customer. A lot of things I forgot. A lot of things I chose to forget because I was nothing like Ray and didn't necessarily want to be like him. We were very different people. But I tell you this because I learned some stuff that made me a lot of money later on. And I'm thankful to Ray. He had no idea what he didn't think the stuff that I learned was the stuff that was going to be valuable. But it paid off. And that's what we're going to learn as this story goes forward. What you do today will make you money in the future. It will do it no matter what, but if you'll keep your head on a swivel and keep your eyes open, it will make you even more money. If you're paying attention to what's going on, you'll do a lot better than if you do everything just by accident. So that's why I'm trying to encourage you, take a look at where you've been, take a look at where you're going, and then we're going to make out a plan. Now, if you've been listening to Flipping Genius since day one, you've probably heard at least a couple episodes about setting goals. And if you know me and you've heard me talk, you know that I've got my clipboard. I keep track every single day of my goals, of where I've been, of where I'm going. I've been doing this for years, so it is not like I'm just making this stuff up. I absolutely practice what I preach, and I'm walking you through what I'm walking through right now. I'm getting ready for 2023. I encourage you to do the same thing, and that's why we're talking about this. So I became a salesman at a men's clothing store. It was a store that concentrated on big and tall men. I was a big and tall man, mostly big. Played offensive guard, and I needed big clothes, not as much as I was going to eventually, but I learned a lot while I was there. The next step for me, I became a husband. Yeah, probably much to the chagrin of my first wife, but as life was progressing, life keeps coming at you, and you keep becoming things. Sometimes out of necessity, sometimes out of desire. And my next step along this way, next new thing was to become not just a salesman, but a life insurance salesman. And I went to work for a company called John Hancock. I'm sure that you've heard of them. And I am of the belief here in the year 2022 that the two hardest things to sell are advertising and life insurance. Now, I haven't sold everything, but I think of these two things as something, a situation where you walk in with nothing and you leave with money, and they have technically nothing but hope and security. I'm not saying the life insurance is not nothing; it's very important, but it is something that is not like a car or a house or clothing or something tangible you can feel and see. It is a belief that you have to instill in someone, and I love it. I love that was where I went first, because it made everything else easier from that point on. Because you had to establish relationships, you had to be able to communicate so that people understood where they wanted to go. They needed you to protect themselves and their families to get there. There's so much more to that, but that was the next thing I became, was a life insurance salesman. Believe me, everything I learned at John Hancock and along the way in other capacities with other companies was substantially beneficial in everything that I did from that point on. I don't know if I would go back and do it again. I don't know if I'm that brave, but that was where I took everything to start with. I eventually became an investment advisor because I got licensed for securities. I along the way became the most important thing maybe that I have ever become, and that was a father. And I was doing it in the midst of this crazy, turbulent time of trying to make something out of nothing, and not knowing where the next paycheck would bring, but the next paycheck was bigger, much bigger than it had been ever before, and the insurance business was a good opportunity for me, and I aspired to greatness there, maybe because it was competitive. It was similar to uh, athletics. I could set goals, I could attain goals, I could attack it, I could work at my own pace. I was, while I was on the same chart as other people, I had a chance to defeat them in my mind. So it was a great thing to become for me, and it led to so many other things. And along the way, I became a sales manager, and I became an independent agent where I could represent multiple companies. I became a district sales manager for that same company. And all of these things gave me an opportunity to learn how to supervise others, to recruit others, and to build different avenues of revenue in different markets, like the business market, and commercial insurance. And I learned a lot. This is a long time ago, so I'm trying to bring this up, but I learned a lot. It took me a lot of other places, and it forever is in my back pocket. And I have life insurance now. I absolutely believe in life insurance. And if you need some, call Maury Carimian. Maury's my agent. He's in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He's a great guy, and yeah, if you feel like, hey, that's something I need to take care of, I'm sure Maury can take care of you. Maury Carimian, check him out. I think Maury, you owe me a dinner now. So that was the next step on my becoming something. And sometimes things don't go the way you plan. Sometimes you're building your ladder, you're driving towards a goal, and I had my eye on the prize, and I was shooting towards a direction that I wanted to be in, and some things happened that changed that. Get back, I'm going to tell you more about that. So things happened that were kind of out of my control, that derailed all my big plans, and I had to find a new way, a new direction to take this train. And I had responsibilities to meet. I needed to make some money to meet those, and I needed to move fast. Now, fortunately, because I've been working in one of the most difficult types of selling, and I've been making contacts all over by now, the southeastern portion of Tennessee, the northwestern portion of Georgia, and some parts of Alabama. I had made contacts with a lot of business people, and before you knew it, I was in industrial supply sales. Sounds kind of bizarre, but the fact was, a lot of the same doors that I'd walked in to talk about the intangible of insurance also needed to talk about the tangible products that I offered as an industrial supply salesperson. This is kind of a short-lived deal, looking for money, and I knew that I was able to communicate. So all those things that I had done gave me a chance to get indoors. And the next thing I knew, I was doing something that I enjoyed more, and I was in outdoor sign sales, and that led to advertising sales, and everything led to another thing. That was fascinating to me, how everything you did led to something else, because the tools that I had developed in those other opportunities in the insurance business, and then in industrial sales, led me to be highly successful in advertising sales. I worked in print advertising back when there was print advertising. And I was very successful working with companies who were in the transportation business. I think it's I don't know if I want to mention all the companies, so I'm not going to mention them. I don't, but I worked in print advertising with one of the largest companies in the promotion of used vehicles of all types, and that taught me so much. I learned a lot about a different type of intangible advertising. Again, I watched how much people would spend to promote what they were trying to sell, and I learned how that type of promotion could benefit, what worked and what didn't work. Not only, if you're doing advertising, it's not about how much money you throw at something. It's about how effective that advertising is, and is it reaching the right eyes, and is it telling the correct message. And I was learning all this as I was going, because I was getting in the doors, the same doors that I had gotten in before, because getting in the door was such a key. Because if you get in the door, you have the opportunity to tell a story. And I already knew how to tell a story because of the other opportunities I'd done before. Now, are you thinking to yourself, Randy, why are you telling me this? Well, because, man, whatever you've done in the past will help you in the future. Whatever you're doing right now is going to benefit you in the future. And you may be doing 100% car flipping. You may be a 100% licensed car dealer already, but chances are, if you're listening to the Flipping Genius, you're on your way. You're on your way to wherever you're going. You haven't already reached there. So I'm trying to reach out to you and say, hey, let's examine where you're at. Let's examine where you've been, and let's figure out where you're going next. And it's the end of the year. It's a great time to get started and get on track to make sure that the next step you take is the right step for you. So that's what we're talking about today. And if you don't like it, send me some hate mail or something to flippingquestions@gmail.com. But I think this is extremely valuable to everybody that hears my voice, and that's why I'm talking about it today. So I'm learning about advertising in my little story here, and I'm still that kid though. Okay, I'm still the golf ball kid. I'm still the kid with the garbage truck. I'm still the guy who sees what's happening, and I see that paycheck they're giving me, which is pretty nice. But I'm thinking, there's more money on some other end of this deal. And that's always in the back of my mind. And that's what's made me an entrepreneur most of my life. And remember way back when I learned about the clothing business. Well, an opportunity came up. I learned about an opportunity. It seems so crazy now. I have trouble piecing this together because it seems like it was a skip on a record. But I opened up a company called the Atlantic Fashion Company. I used all the things that I had learned up to that point about business, about selling, about advertising and marketing, about keeping costs down in business. I'd seen other people make mistakes. Some of those mistakes had led them to not be my customer anymore. And I decided I could start a men's clothing business in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I did. And it was very successful. It was a lot of fun. And I swear, I was drawn on the same stuff that I had learned way back from Ray at Harry's Clothing. I was drawing on the connections that I had built in the insurance and investment business. I was building on the connections that I had made in the advertising business. I was able to get out my Rolodex. If you don't know what a Rolodex is, Google it. I was able to get that out and just start flipping through it. For those of you who don't, if you're watching the video, this is what they look like. It says Rolodex right there. And in there are all your contacts. I still got one on my desk. I do I do use electronic stuff now, but there's still contacts in there that some of them may not be on my other, but I still have that thing. So I got out the old Rolodex, which used to be packed full, and just went to town. Went to town making that Atlantic fashion company grow, and what an amazing thing! What an amazing thing that you could learn. Everything you've learned was applicable. You didn't even recognize it. You didn't recognize it going in. And that's what I'm trying to tell you, brothers, sisters. Whatever you're doing right now will help you. You know, even if you feel like you're falling on your face, even if you think, why did I buy that car for $1,700 that I can only sell for $1,300 after I put $500 in it? Well, don't do that a lot, but you're going to do that. You're going to make mistakes. Mistakes. As way back when we had my buddy Ed Fox on, FOX, he said, failure is not a period, it's a comma. And as long as you look at it that way, you are driving your train in the right direction. Every now and then you're going to have to pull it off those tracks and move it over here, but just keep working at it, man. You will get to success as long as you are willing to keep working, and don't do things without paying attention. Remember what you learned. The mistakes, the good, the bad, take it with you and apply it to your next step. And that was what I was doing when I started my clothing business. It was a lot of fun, and it led me to one of my favorite things I ever did, and that was to coach high school football. How it led me to that? What was the freedom? The freedom of being an entrepreneur gave me the opportunity to do something I loved, and that was coach high school football in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and had a great time. I did not get paid for that, and I did not try to get paid for that. However, like everything in my life, if I do it, I get paid for it one way or another, because my head's on a swivel. I'm looking for opportunities, and as I did that, as I kept that head on my swivel, and I went from this very poor school where I coached to coach against schools that had very well supported programs, I recognized opportunities, and I started an athletic equipment company and a sideline advertising company that was pretty successful. It made some money. And it taught me again more stuff. And it led me to the next step on this tour. This is so funny to relive this, and I hope you're amused as I am at my own story, because the next step was again drawing on all that stuff that I had learned, the insurance business, the advertising business, the face-to-face sales calls, and now with coaching too, you know, and I saw an opportunity in the market. I believe I was at the time I was tipping the scale well over 300 pounds. So I went to buffets a lot, and I was out maybe with some of my players, and I noticed on the newsstands back then, we still had paper stuff, and there I saw a hole in the marketplace in the real estate business. There was not a magazine that was targeting investment real estate, which is something I was starting to get into. They started a company called Middleman Magazine, and you hear the Middleman name that's lived on now for over 20 years. And Middleman Magazine and eventually Middleman Enterprises was a way to reach the community at first in Tennessee and later on in Georgia and Alabama with information about investment properties and real estate, mostly both residential and commercial. And I own the magazine. I published the magazine. I printed the magazine. I did every element of that business. Sometimes I'm not very good. I'm learning this. I could be better at delegating, but I was working a lot. But I worked when I wanted to. played golf when I wanted to, coached football when I wanted to, and by this time, I believe the clothing business had been sold, and I had moved on to doing the publishing. Along the way, I got involved in other businesses. And I'm not going to go into the details on those. Some of those I'm still involved in today, and I don't want to give away trade secrets, so I'll just say that I've learned a lot from those too. Some involve retail, some involve manufacturing, and as you grow businesses, you draw on what you've done before, and I continue to draw on those things. So I became a real estate investor. I became a licensed realtor. And I had a magazine that publicized what I did and put me at the forefront of that business. This was back in the 2000s. Most of you know, in 2008, we had a terrible downfall in the real estate business, and that, like so many things, you know, it could have been an opportunity to grow, or it could have been a situation where it was time to jump. And I decided to do the latter instead of the former. And I saw an opportunity at that time to get into a few different things. And one of them, surprisingly, was flipping cars. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But along the way, I also did some fun stuff, like became a songwriter. Back in a couple of years earlier, I wrote a book about the real estate business, which was very successful. Gave me an opportunity to network with investors all around the country. If you want more information about my real estate book, email me, FlippingQuestions@gmail.com. Be happy to share that with you. I became a builder along with a couple partners. That's something that extended both in the late 2010s and again in 2019. Built single family here in Alabama. Again, all of these things led to other things. You draw on what you've learned, and you can become something different. Doesn't mean you're not what you used to be. You can just become more. It's fascinating, really. Life is fascinating. I mean, I became a songwriter in my 50s. I'd been writing songs since I was a little boy, frankly, but in an organized fashion, I became a songwriter in my 50s. I became a musician in my 50s. I just sang a cappella when I was a songwriter. I became a musician and learned how to play the guitar. I became an entertainer and a host. I was actually paid to do this, to go perform and entertain people. I hosted a songwriter showcase here in Alabama with other songwriters, and it's amazing. It kind of amazes me, and that's really what got me thinking about this. Just thinking about all the things that I've been able to become over the years. And all of these things have helped me become a better car flipper, and now a licensed car dealer, and a podcaster, obviously, and these days actually an industry consultant to the auto industry in the form of the Independent Auto Dealers Association of Alabama. But all of these things all lead to more things. And now it's time for all of us, as for me, to say, what's next? What is next? What am I going to do next on my journey? The first thing I'm going to do is take a break. All right. What's next? What's next for me and what's next for you are two different things. Or maybe they're not. Maybe you have exactly the same path as me, but that would be highly, highly unlikely. And it's also something that will change because circumstances, the economy, the environment, desires, all change as time goes by. And you have to recognize that. But the important thing is to have a plan, set in place and be ready to attack life, to be willing to take chances, but make those educated chances, to prepare for those opportunities and then go attack them. And that's what we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk about setting goals and achieving them, setting goals and tracking them, setting goals to become something and then becoming them, and then, and then, and then. It's an exciting life, folks. Being a flipping genius, it's a lot of fun. And I think we all can become one as long as we are focused on becoming whatever it is you want to be. Whatever kind of flipping genius you want to be, you can do it. You just have to believe in yourself, and you have to track it, chase it, and hunt it down, and you can get there. Isn't that cool? I think it's pretty cool. Hey, we'll be back in the next episode. We're going to talk about the other side of this thing, about tracking that thing down and getting there. The next episode of Flipping Genius. But for now, let's work together. Let's make some money. Let's all become flipping geniuses.